people listen to respond and not listen to understand. And when you listen to respond, you basically wasted a conversation because you're not truly listening to me. You're just waiting to get a chance to say something back. And this goes is even when you deal with disagreements. Hey guys, I'm back with another episode of Mental Wealth. This podcast is used to express thoughts, experiences, and lessons. I aim to be as transparent as possible. If you enjoy an episode, please don't forget to like, comment, and tell a friend. Thank you. Hey guys, welcome back to Mental Wealth. In today's episode, I plan to talk about active listening. I think it's very important to start with a life update. So I've had 5 job interviews this week, and I got every job. So it's a great thing. And now I just have to make decisions on what's the best job that I feel like I should take. But I can't do anything but thank God because, only without him, I wouldn't be able to do any of this and be prepared for the types of various different questions I had to answer. And just being prepared for any moment that comes to me. I think a lot of times we complain about opportunity instead of making the best of it. So active listening. I think this is very important because we have conversations with people all day, every day. We constantly have conversation. That's how humans communicate with each other. For the most part, there's sign language and various other forms of communication, but communication only works as good as your ability to listen and to understand. I think listening is one thing and I think understanding is another. Because people listen to music, listen to various radio shows, movies, whatever, any form of entertainment, but do you understand what you're listening to? So I think it's important for me to cover both of them. So what is active listening? Active listening is fully focusing on what someone says to truly understand them. And I think this became a bigger problem in today's society because a lot of people listen to respond and not listen to understand. And when you listen to respond, you basically wasted a conversation because you're not truly listening to me. You're just waiting to get a chance to say something back. And this is even when you deal with disagreements, this plays a major role. By being able to listen to understand and not listen to respond, this makes conversation 10 times better. And you can almost tell when somebody's just listening to you just to respond anyway. So I hate talking to people that talk like that or who conversate like that because they just truly want to hear themselves talk. They don't care what the other person is saying. Active listening improves relationships, communication, and understanding, as I just mentioned. I think it's important to go into the difference between hearing and listening. When I mention hearing, I mean passive hearing. So passive hearing is primarily a psychological process. Sound waves enter the ear canal, vibrate the eardrum, and are transmitted to the brain. This occurs automatically and unconsciously. It's the basic ability to detect sound. In passive hearing, there's a lack of focused attention on the sound source. The mind may be preoccupied with other thoughts or distractions. You may be physically present but mentally absent. And this is a big thing that sticks out. This involves superficial processing. The brain may register the sound, but it doesn't necessarily process or interpret the meaning in a meaningful way. This also affects the engagement process with the conversation with whoever you're having. Passive hearing is a one-way process. There's no active engagement with the sound source or the speaker. There's no feedback loop, no interaction, and no attempt to verify the understanding. The consequences of this it leads to misunderstandings, misinformation, and a lack of connection with whoever you're having a conversation with. Whoever you're talking to may feel ignored. Now let's talk about active listening. Engaged listening is a conscious and intentional effort that requires cognitive and emotional engagement. It involves actively focusing on the speaker, processing their message, and understanding their perspective. What affects people's ability to understand what somebody is saying is perspective on every situation. And a lot of people look at things only from their perspective, so they're completely unable to understand what somebody else is saying. This goes beyond just hearing words. It's about understanding the speaker and understanding the underlying emotions, intentions, and the context of their message. This involves paying attention to verbal cues, tone, pace, volume, and nonverbal cues, body language, and facial expressions, of course. Engaged listening is a two-way process. This involves actively participating in the communication exchange. This includes verbal feedback, asking clarifying questions, paraphrasing, summarizing, and nonverbal feedback. Maintaining eye contact, nodding, and displaying open, engaged body language. By doing this, it builds rapport and trust. By demonstrating active listening, you show the speaker that you value their thoughts, feelings, which builds rapport and trust. It creates a safe space and an emotional and a supportive environment for open and honest communication. The benefits of this are enhanced communication, stronger relationships, increased empathy, and reduced conflict. And it improves problem solving. The key differences between active listening and passive hearing are intentionality. Hearing is automatic. Listening is intentional. Focus. Hearing is passive. Listening is focused and engaged. Understanding. Hearing registers sounds. Active listening interprets the meaning. Feedback. Hearing involves no feedback. Listening involves active feedback. Engagement. Hearing is one way, listening is two ways. Some common barriers to active listening are distractions, internal and external, preconceived notions and biases, planning your response instead of actually listening, which I covered earlier, and lack of interest or engagement. A lot of people are not even interested in what you're saying, so it's harder for them to even try to understand what you're saying. I think it's important to get into some techniques of active listening. Nonverbal cues include your eye contact, your body language, and nodding and facial expressions. I mean, you can simply nod in agreement. You can smile, not smile, and just maintain eye contact. I mean, I learned the eye contact thing early as a child. What my parents always say, when somebody's talking to you, you look them in the eyes. And this has become lost over time, but I think it's more so because people don't. We used to have a lot of conversations that were face to face, and now they're screen to screen. Some verbal techniques for active listening are paraphrasing and summarizing, asking clarifying questions, reflecting feelings and emotions. I was at 3. Using minimum encourages like or I see, and avoiding interrupting somebody. What I've noticed with having conversations with people, in real conversations with people, a lot of times they have already been wanting to talk about these things and they have not had really anybody to go to talk about them. So the more you interrupt somebody, the less likely they want to continue the conversation. A lot of times I just let people talk. I let people get whatever they have off their chest or whatever, and then I give my response. You want to listen the whole time they're talking to, because if you're just listening to respond, you wasted your time. I think what is also important is to give somebody your full attention and to be present in the moment. And if anything, you really can't go wrong from practicing conversations. I mean, if you, just like me, I mean, I had 5 job interviews this week. It was nothing but conversation over and over again. I would even say this podcast helps me because it makes me have to sit back and find better ways to say stuff, or I shouldn't have said this, or it was a better way to say this. And by practicing conversations with people, I mean, that's a lost art. By even being able to practice this, you will improve. I think what helps in practicing is start with low stakes conversations. So I would practice a regular conversation or a regular everyday conversation, like how was your day and so forth. I think what is also important is to focus on one technique at a time. So in the first time you practice it, I might want to focus more so on my body language. And then the next time I want to focus more so on my eye contact. Then the next time I want to focus on my ability not to interrupt somebody, and so forth. And I think the best thing that helps all this is just seeking feedback. If you don't know what you're messing up on, you will never be able to correct it. And mindfulness and just being present. Being mindful helps all of these skills. I think it's important to go into some challenges and common mistakes people face with dealing with this. I think it's important is to recognize your triggers. And this involves self-awareness. Before engaging in a conversation, especially when it could be potentially sensitive, take a moment to reflect on what typically triggers you. Alright, my fault, guys. I had to move my screen around because I feel like I'm looking this way, and it kind of felt a little different from what I'm used to. But what is also important is to identify patterns. And notice patterns in your reaction, because there's patterns in everything. Everything has an inner rhythm and so forth. This can go by the topics, phrases, or tones that tend to set you off. And journaling. I journal. I got my little notepad right here, and I keep a binder with various ideas and different situations that I went through. But if you keep a journal, you're able to track your emotional responses to conversations and how you felt. And this will also be able to help you identify different patterns and stuff that you're not immediately noticing. So through consistently tracking and keeping up with the different controversial conversations that you had or different conversations that have bothered you, you're able to notice patterns yourself without feeling attacked when somebody else says, oh, I noticed that you typically, anytime we talk about politics or something, you typically get mad and check out the conversation. And instead of somebody having to tell you that, you can realize it yourself. And that was just an example. I think what also helps is practicing mindfulness, just like I said earlier, and grounding yourself. This can involve deep breathing. If you feel triggered, take slow, deep breaths, and this helps calm your nervous system. You can use grounding, of course. This is what I typically use to bring yourself back to the present moment. For example, focus on physical sensations of your feelings on the ground or count objects in the room. And another thing that helps is mindful observation. Observe your emotions without judgment. Acknowledge when you are letting your feelings take over. What helps additionally is creating mental space. Pause and reflect. If you feel overwhelmed, it's okay to pause. It's okay to pause the conversation politely. I wouldn't just get up and walk out the room and storm out and stuff, but it's okay to take a step back and take a moment to collect yourself when you notice you're getting triggered. You can also use mental detachment. You can create a safe mental distance between yourself and the trigger and remind yourself that you're listening to understand, not to react. What also helps is visualizing a barrier. Imagine a protective barrier between you and the emotional trigger. This can help you maintain emotional distance, because there's a difference between physical distance and emotional distance. So this will help with the emotional distance while you're sitting there in the same place. What is very important is to reframe your thoughts. I probably say this on every episode, and I probably say it on every one every time. God, I keep looking at this little pimple I got right there. I'm probably gonna pop this as soon as this ends. Keeps looking. It's like it's looking back at me. But reframe your thoughts. First thing you want to do is challenge your negative thoughts. If you find yourself thinking negatively, challenge those thoughts with more balanced and rational ones. And this is what I had the biggest problem with. What also helps is focusing on the speaker's perspective. Remind yourself that the conversation is about the speaker's experience, not your own. And a lot of times we tend to focus on ourselves, so it makes it even harder to see stuff from anybody else's perspective. I mean, even when I think about me having conversations with various family members and I tell them about something that's bothering me, they start talking about something that's bothering them. I'm like, bro, like, what are we doing here? I came to you to talk to you about something that's bothering me, not just to hear you go on the soapbox about everything that somebody's done to you. It's like they're trying to one-up you on the bad stuff that they went through. And I'm like, bro, that's not why I came to you to talk. Or like, where are we going to get here? We're just going to go down 60 plus years of you just talking about all the bad things that happened to you, and I just happened to that is not even what I came to talk about. And it actually makes you feel worse when you have these interactions with people. I know I feel worse, because then I feel like you obviously didn't listen. You didn't listen to me to listen. You were just hearing me so you could respond. What also helps with reframing your thoughts is empathy and compassion. Try to understand the speaker's emotions and perspective, and even if you don't agree with them. And this is what I've noticed has became more prevalent in today's world, because a lot of people completely dismiss things if they don't agree with them. And there's a lot of truth in the things that you don't agree with. Even if you don't agree with them, there's truth in everything. And I think this is also what has made the world more trivial and more, why we're able to be so connected but yet so far apart. And I think it mainly comes from people are not able to properly disagree with each other. And there's a right way to disagree with each other, and there's obviously a wrong way to disagree with each other. There's disagreements that involve arguments and fights, and there's disagreements that involve mutually being able to accept a difference in opinions. I might make my episode about the right way to disagree with people, because I think that kind of follows up on this. What is also very important is to manage your physical reactions. This involves relaxing your body, notice any tension in your body, and consciously relax your muscles. What also helps is taking deep breaths. Fix your posture, maintain an open, relaxed posture, and signal that you're engaged. And hydrate. Just drinking water. Anytime I want to collect my thoughts, I just sit there and drink water. I mean, I've had 5 interviews. I probably drank water majority of the various interviews this past week, just to sit there and collect my thoughts and just not to keep flying off at the mouth. What also helps is communicating your needs. This is what we don't do. I think we indirectly try to communicate our needs. This doesn't help either person in the conversation or whoever you're talking to. This starts by being honest and having honest communication. If you're feeling overwhelmed, it's okay to communicate your needs to whoever you're speaking to in a respectful way. You can be like, all right, I feel overwhelmed right now, so can we take a break, or can we finish this conversation tomorrow or later or something like that? But it's important to communicate. Also, like I did talked about last episode, is just set boundaries. If the conversation is consistently triggering you, set boundaries around the topic or the relationship, or both of them. What is also very important is to practice managing your emotional triggers. Because one thing for me to sit here and talk about it is another thing for you to practice it sometimes. But you should regularly practice these things. Reflect on the conversation. Having a post-conversation reflection. After the conversation, you want to reflect on your emotional responses and identify areas for improvement. I think a lot of times we can see improvement in everybody else but ourselves. And you won't grow like that. And this makes somebody else feel attacked, or it puts them on the defensive, because you can tell me what to do, but you can't tell yourself what to do. And I've always had a problem with this, so I know everybody else would. Some important things are to prepare, calm yourself and set intentions, have a safe place, listen actively, manage your reactions, respond, show empathy, and have empathy, and follow up. Some common pitfalls of this are jumping to conclusions, offering unsolicited advice, which I've faced various times. You probably face them too. Judging or criticizing somebody, and trying to fix the problem instead of listening. A lot of people just want somebody to listen to them. And this is what I've noticed from being a therapist. A lot of people know what their problems are. They just want somebody to listen to them. They want it to be a non-biased conversation. They don't want to feel judged. So that's where I come in. Some key takeaways I want you to take away from this is active listening is intentional and transformative. It's way more than just hearing. It's a conscious effort to try to understand somebody. Understanding the difference between hearing and listening is fundamental. Hearing is passive, while listening is active and an engaged process. Active listening builds strong relationships. It creates empathy, trust, and reduces misunderstandings. Techniques like paraphrasing, nonverbal cues, and asking clarifying questions are essential. These tools, practice is key to mastering active listening. So you won't get any better unless you practice it. Start small. Manage your emotional triggers. This is probably the most important part about this. Where managing your emotional triggers is crucial for effective listening and recognizing what triggers you. And remember, difficult conversations require extra care. Try to not jump to conclusions or give advice that nobody wants. I ran into this. And finally, active listening improves communication in all areas of life. If you enjoyed today's episode, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll be back with you for another one. Peace.